The legendary actor Gene Hackman died in a sealed compound, but what federal agents found hidden beneath his private library was so profoundly unsettling, the FBI has said absolutely nothing about it since. For anyone who has handled thousands of death investigations, such a complete lack of information is a profound rarity. The true question isn't how Gene Hackman died. It's what he spent his entire life making sure no one would ever find. On February 26, 2025, a convoy of federal vehicles breached the reinforced steel gates outside Santa Fe, New Mexico. Inside the sprawling $4 million estate, they found the 5-year-old Oscar-winning actor Gene Hackman, his 5-year-old wife, Betsy Arakawa, and their dog, all deceased. Nobody had heard from either of them in days. Calls went unreturned, staff failed to arrive, and a property that usually ran with the precision of a small private installation was enveloped in an unnerving silence. It was a handyman, not family or friends, who eventually raised the alarm, telling deputies he believed they were dead inside. The gates had to be forced open, the locks cut, an act that immediately signaled to agents that something was deeply wrong. This wasn't a home where someone simply forgot to check in. Every aspect of this compound was engineered to remain sealed unless opened by someone from within. Gene Hackman and Betsy Arakawa were found dead inside the mansion alongside their dog. Betsy had died roughly a week before Gene, succumbing to a severe viral infection, while Gene's cause of death was listed as heart failure due to natural causes. On paper, the case was closed. The Santa Fe Sheriff's Department publicly stated there were no signs of foul play. Yet, in the very same statement, they admitted the scene necessitated a full forensic search of the entire property, involving federal teams, thermal imaging, and forensic specialists. No foul play, and suspicious enough for all that, simply do not belong in the same sentence. The timeline only deepens the mystery. Betsy died 7 days before Gene. This means Hackman was alive in that house with his wife's body for up to a week. No call for help. No attempt to reach anyone. The alarm system was still active, but the internal cameras had been manually disabled. What could compel a man to remain silent for 7 days in a house with a deceased loved one? Was it fear, duty, or the chilling knowledge that calling for help meant letting strangers inside? Strangers who would inevitably discover what lay hidden beneath. Gene Hackman's estate was more than a home. It was a fortress. Dense forest surrounded it on all sides. Stone walls encircled the perimeter. Motion sensors guarded every access point, and thermal cameras provided surveillance rivaling classified government installations. The staff was meticulously handpicked, vetted, and bound by legal agreements so stringent that not a single one ever spoke publicly about what transpired within those walls. Decades of employees, gardeners, housekeepers, maintenance workers, yet not a single leak. In the age of social media, such absolute silence does not happen by accident. It is enforced. These were not casual non-disclosure agreements. Former employees were explicitly prohibited from discussing not only what they saw, but also the very layout of the grounds, visitor names, and even the daily schedule. Building permit requests for the estate often came back heavily redacted, and property records contained inexplicable gaps. Body camera footage released after a judge's ruling shows deputies entering the mansion, immediately struck by the silence. But it wasn't the quiet that unsettled agents. It was the unmistakable evidence that someone had been frantically busy before their arrival. Furniture dragged across hardwood floors, books pulled from shelves and haphazardly restacked, drawers left ajar, a bedroom safe, open, and empty. Someone had either been searching for something or meticulously ensuring something was hidden away before the end came. Then, agents walked into the library. It's crucial to understand the deliberate slowness of this discovery. The agent who first noticed an anomaly in the library wall wasn't actively searching for a hidden door. He was systematically photographing the room, meticulously documenting evidence as per routine. His flashlight beam caught an inconsistency in the wall paneling, a seam that utterly failed to match the grain pattern of the surrounding wood. He pressed it. Nothing. He pressed again, with a different approach, and something yielded. Behind a section of wall in Hackman's private library, concealed with such precision that one could stand in that room 1,000 times and never notice, federal agents found a hidden mechanism. This was no simple hinged bookcase or latch behind a painting. It was an engineered entry point, demanding a specific activation sequence. Whoever built it clearly intended it to remain invisible to anyone who wasn't already privy to its existence. Beyond it, a narrow passageway of stone steps descended into total blackness. No discernible light source, no ventilation, just carved stone dropping straight down into the earth. The agent went first, alone, describing it later in a debrief that was leaked to a single journalist before being immediately classified. With every step down, the temperature plummeted, not with the gradual cool of a basement, but something sharper, like descending into a space sealed for so long that the cold had become structural. The air grew thick, damp, metallic, carrying an ancient scent he had no words for. His flashlight beam hit the walls and stopped moving. What agents found at the bottom of those steps is the very reason this entire story exists. The walls were covered, floor to ceiling, every surface etched with deliberate markings. These weren't random scratches, but intricate designs, carved with tools and intention by hands that knew precisely what they were doing, wanting every mark to endure. Marcus Devlin, a structural engineer who later reviewed leaked photographs of the passage, stared at those wall markings for a long time before speaking. Sitting at his desk in his Denver office, photographs spread before him. He set his coffee down and didn't pick it up again. Some of the markings bore a striking resemblance to alchemical notation, symbols linked to transformation and concealment, processes designed to be invisible to outside observers. Others were entirely different, technical blueprints, interlocking schematics with an internal logic, drawn by someone possessing genuine engineering knowledge. One forensic technician, in a report later partially redacted, used just 4 words to describe what he was witnessing. Engineering from nowhere. Not from an unknown country, not from an obscure era, but literally from times nowhere. Whoever carved those walls had access to principles and methods that do not trace back to any known scientific tradition. That report was classified within 48 hours of being filed. The tunnel itself told a complex story, a narrative crafted by 2 distinct authors, separated by decades. Near the library entrance, the stonework was characteristic of the mid-20th century. Clean cuts, industrial materials, poured concrete reinforcement. Clearly the work of someone with access to modern construction resources and the financial means to employ them discreetly. But the deeper agents ventured, the rougher the walls became. Hand-carved joints, primitive reinforcement, tool marks from picks and chisels, not power tools or anything that plugged into a wall. The lower sections of this tunnel were built by hand, in the dark, by people whose names are absent from any record. Marcus Devlin, still at his Denver desk, with his coffee untouched, looked at the photographs for a long time before he spoke. This wasn't built by the homeowner, he stated. The upper section was renovated, modernized, reinforced, but the core of this tunnel was already here. Hackman moved into it. He inherited it, and then spent years maintaining it, reinforcing it, and ensuring no one outside those walls ever found out it was there. That is not the behavior of someone who stumbled upon an old basement. That is the behavior of someone who understood exactly what they were sitting on. The passageway eventually opened into a vast, frozen chamber. Beyond scattered crates and files, their flashlights finally illuminated it. An iron door, set directly into the living rock. No handle on the outside, no visible hinges, just a corroded steel surface with weld marks tracing every seam. It was sealed from the inside by someone who never came back out. This lock wasn't designed to keep people from getting in. It was designed to keep something from getting out. Within the vast, frozen chamber, ancient wooden crates were stacked against every wall. Some collapsed with age. Their contents spilled across the stone floor. Then, in a crate near the center of the room, an agent lifted a cloth and discovered it. A palm-sized metal cylinder with rotating internal rings. There were no visible seams anywhere on its surface. He turned it over in his gloved hands for a full minute before calling anyone else over. He would later tell a colleague it looked like something cast as a single piece from the inside out. This was a sentence that shouldn't make physical sense, yet it was the only way anyone could describe it. There was no joint, no weld, no seam where components had been assembled. The internal rings rotated freely, with no visible mechanism to explain how. Such a feat, engineers agreed, is simply not possible with our current understanding of manufacturing. 3 engineers were independently given photographs of the object. None knew the others had been consulted. All 3 reached the same conclusion. They could not explain its fabrication. The cylinder's construction would require manufacturing techniques that did not exist when this tunnel was built. And depending on the true age of the lower sections of that tunnel, which no one has officially confirmed, it may require manufacturing techniques that do not exist even now. It sat there, in a chamber 12 meters underground, beneath a dead man's house, waiting. The floor of the chamber wasn't merely stone. That was the first thing every agent who entered the room stated in their debrief. The entire floor was a map. Circular patterns, intricate and deliberate, were carved across the entire surface. From the chamber entrance, the sheer scale of it was apparent. The whole floor, the whole room, was one continuous design. Dr. James Whitfield, who spent 19 years as an FBI forensic analyst and was shown the debrief photographs at his home outside Richmond, Virginia, put on his glasses and leaned forward over his kitchen table. He remained silent for almost 2 minutes. "Those are star charts," he finally said. "Whoever carved that floor was mapping specific astronomical alignments, constellations, planetary positions, orbital paths. This required advanced mathematical knowledge. This wasn't decorative. The person who did this was marking something, or marking it for someone else who would know how to read it." He paused. And they were right. Someone did know how to read it. We're reading it right now. But, the inscriptions on the walls, intricately linked to the patterns on the floor, taken together, the chamber was a single, integrated document, meticulously designed, intentionally built to last, and engineered to be found by the right person at the right time. Marcus Devlin was sent the floor photographs separately. He immediately requested the wall photographs again. After reviewing them, he was quiet for a long time. "This is one system," he eventually said. "The walls and the floor, one person designed all of it. The engineering knowledge required, and whatever made that cylinder, these aren't separate things. They come from the same source." Nobody had anything to say. Here's something the news coverage never connected, and it changes everything. The territory surrounding Hackman's estate is not just art galleries and desert sunsets. Los Alamos, the birthplace of the atomic bomb, sits just down the road. The Manhattan Project, nuclear testing, black-budget weapons research, all of it within driving distance of Hackman's old front gate. For decades, Locals have whispered about underground bunkers carved into the mesas, infrastructure built to survive the end of the surface world. Some facilities are officially on record, others appear nowhere. No deed, no permit, no decommissioning order. They simply stopped being referenced and were never mentioned again. Freedom of Information requests confirmed extensive underground construction in this region during the Cold War, but the responsive documents came back with entire pages blacked out. Richard Payne, a retired Department of Energy consultant who worked on facility assessments in northern New Mexico during the 1990s, chose his words carefully. There are systems under those mesas built to outlast the surface, he stated. Some were decommissioned, some were sealed, some were simply forgotten, disconnected from every official record. Marcus Devlin had already been contemplating this connection. When informed of Payne's statement, he didn't hesitate. The steel in that tunnel is military grade, he asserted. The rivet spacing matches construction techniques from high-security government installations built in the 1950s. A wine cellar doesn't get built like a bank vault. A storage room doesn't get sealed from the inside. What I'm looking at is consistent with a classified government structure, a spur from a larger network that was sealed off and removed from every official document. He paused. Which means Hackman may not have built the secret. He may have purchased a property that came with one, a secret already decades old when he moved in, and then chose, actively and deliberately, to protect it for the rest of his life. The neighbors always sensed something was amiss. Margaret Calloway, who owned the adjacent property for 22 years, still recounts the sounds. Low-frequency vibrations at 2 or 3 in the morning, not plumbing, not heating, but something industrial, deep. You felt it in your ribs, she described. She once brought it up to Hackman across the property line. He gave her a look she still thinks about. Some things are better left below the surface, he told her. She laughed it off at the time. She doesn't laugh anymore. A retired geologist named Frank Delqua, who lived 2 properties east, independently confirmed the vibrations. He set up a portable seismometer one summer, and the readings didn't match any natural pattern. They were rhythmic, mechanical, indicating something running down there on a schedule. He filed a noise complaint with the county in 2019, but it was never followed up on. Others recalled unmarked trucks arriving after dark, gone before sunrise, leaving no invoices, no logos, no trace. County records show no permitted work during those periods, and no contractor ever filed a receipt. During the renovations that first exposed the tunnel entrance, workers found a secondary communication line hardwired into the estate's walls. This wiring predated modern telecommunications by decades, connecting the main house directly to the chamber below. It was still functional, still maintained. Who was on the other end? Here's what people often forget about Gene Hackman. Before the fortress, before the silence, before he vanished entirely from public life, he was one of the most genuinely warm presences in American film. Not warm in a performed celebrity way, but in a manner that made strangers feel as though they already knew him. His barber in Santa Fe recalled Hackman coming in every few weeks, sitting in the same chair, and spending an hour discussing Hemingway novels and the Kansas weather he grew up in. He tipped double, remembered people's children's names, their ages, their Little League teams. At the local farmers market, vendors knew him by sight. He'd buy green chilies in bulk and joke about his terrible Spanish. A local librarian remembered how he would linger after community events, genuinely interested in whatever conversation he'd stumbled into, present, curious, in a way most people with his level of fame simply are not. This was not a man built for isolation. People do not lock themselves away from a world they love unless something compels them to. The surveillance, the legal agreements, the silence of everyone who ever worked that property, the walls, the cameras, the sealed gates. He didn't build all of that because he was merely eccentric. He built it because something underneath his house demanded it. From the French Connection to Enemy of the State, Hackman spent his career playing men trapped inside conspiracies they couldn't escape. Men who knew too much, men who built walls because the alternative was far worse. Perhaps that was never just acting. He died of heart failure at 95. Plausible. But it doesn't explain why a couple with access to the finest healthcare in the world isolated themselves completely in their final days. No doctor calls, no emergency contacts, no staff on the premises, the alarm system active, the internal cameras manually disabled, no record of any call made or received in the final weeks. It's as if, at some point in those last months, Gene Hackman made a definitive decision. The outside world needed to be completely shut out, and he followed through on that decision all the way to the end. 2 people, alone in a fortress, dying in silence, while something sealed 12 meters beneath them held its breath. The tunnel entrance in the library wasn't sealed when agents found it. The mechanism had been activated recently. Gene Hackman, a man in his mid-90s, had gone down into that cold, damp passage not long before he died. Why? What was he checking? What was he afraid of? Or was he descending one final time to ensure the thing he had spent his entire life protecting was still secure? The FBI has said absolutely nothing publicly about what lies beyond that iron door. No official comment, no leak, no background briefing. In an era where classified documents can end up on social media within hours, that level of containment requires active suppression. That silence speaks volumes, more than any press conference ever could. FBI forensic teams are reportedly still down there, examining every artifact, every document, every symbol, trace DNA, cryptographic decoding of inscriptions left by hands dead for generations, linguists, metallurgists, astronomers, interpreting the star charts from the chamber floor. Months have passed since the initial discovery, and in any normal investigation, something always leaks. In this case, nothing. The information lockdown around that tunnel is tighter than anything surrounding the deaths themselves. Tighter than the deaths of 2 people who died alone, in a sealed compound with no witnesses and no staff. That asymmetry is deliberate. Marcus Devlin, informed that the FBI had released nothing from the chamber, didn't hesitate. There are 2 reasons an agency goes completely silent on a physical discovery, he stated. Either they found nothing significant, or they found something so far outside their existing framework that they don't yet have the language to explain it. He glanced at the photographs on his desk. This doesn't look like nothing. Dr. James Whitfield, with 19 years processing classified federal evidence, was quiet when asked what he thought was behind that iron door. When an agency goes this quiet, this fast, it means one of 2 things, he said. Either they found nothing and they're embarrassed, or they found something so significant that the disclosure conversation has moved above the investigative team. I've seen both. This doesn't look like embarrassment. Gene Hackman guarded that door for decades. The walls, the cameras, the legal agreements, the total isolation, an existence engineered to ensure no one ever found what was underneath. He carried that weight to the final hours of his life. And now, he's gone. The last person who knew every corridor of that tunnel, every crate in that chamber, every mark on those walls, is no longer here to protect it. The question isn't whether the FBI knows what's down there. They do. The question is what could be so dangerous, so fundamentally destabilizing, that they would rather say absolutely nothing than tell the public what they found behind that door. Was he its guardian or its final prisoner? Drop your theory in the comments.